Hello, welcome back, everyone. Here we are on the last Sunday night of August 2024. We have our esteemed panel here for Awaken Your Inner Genius. And by this time, we know you've gotten to know the panelists, and we have a terrific session here for everybody today. So, as we've been doing, we like to start with just a moment, but tonight we made a decision to have a silent meditation as it relates to the ocean sounds. And so, in just a moment, I'm going to be quiet. We're going to turn on the ocean sounds, and we encourage you to simply tune in to the universal heartbeat of the universe. You see the beautiful photo there by our own panelist, John Bonzel. And James, if we can roll the sounds, I will time it for everyone to get quiet for just a moment. As you finish your deep breathing, find your way back to us. Thank you so much. Now, do know that on our channel, Awaken, here on Awaken Your Inner Genius for YouTube, we do have a 24/7 channel video that actually ties you into those ocean sounds. And I know I go to that channel a lot when I need some help in being grounded here today. So as we kick off today, I just wanted to remind everybody where we are here in August and share with you a decision that we made about going back. And while we have everybody else joining us in, do know that we want to start with questions. So while the image is being brought up about where we are in today's broadcast, I just want to ask our panelists or everyone to say a quick hello to everyone and just welcome this evening.
Hello, everybody.
Hi. What's up? What's up?
That was a test to see if you all could say hello at the same time. Hello, Miss Lisa. Hello, Miss Linda. When we have broadcasts like this, here we have all the way every single Sunday night we come together, and this is a gift of love. Tonight we're technically on Unit 3, Lesson 12, where we're going to be talking about Q&A from the Russell students. But we did decide to go back, and hello, Miss Bonnie, sending much love here. We did decide to go back to just 3 pages in Unit 11 before we dive into Unit 12, and we'll do that in just a moment. So I want to show something right quick about a student spotlight, though. So as we do this, I wanted to bring up one thing. There is our former Chief Science Officer, Scott Vanderpool. I wanted to let you all know about his YouTube channel called 3D Frequency. He is taking the Russell science and doing videos to try to help people who are scientists understand the Russell work. So if you have any scientists in your family, I just wanted to say kudos to Scott. He's working hard on this, and a very big, gracious thank you. So if we would, for the panel, I wanted to have us go back to Unit 11 because Unit 11, right quick, was a really, really big channel. And so while we're waiting to see if there are any questions from the audience, hello, Miss Susan, glad to see you. And there's Miss Deb. I wanted to ask John, if you would please read that first paragraph in 220. You'll see where I have it starred and highlighted, going back to Unit Lesson 11.
Very good. It is the residue of unbalance and all mismatings, which is the basis of every trouble in the world. Its ills, its frustrations, its wars, its sicknesses, enmities, bankruptcies, and all other effects which we call bad or do not like to have happen to us. This residue of unbalance in our civilization of today is our immediate concern. The measure of it in every man's life and in nation and international relations is the gauge of our present status of world disunity, which places the world in a low state of its unfolding. It is far from its balance point between its spiritual and physical expressions. It is at least 1,000 years away for the masses, but fortunately, a probable 10% had arrived at its very door. Those who are among that 10% will fully comprehend these teachings and apply them for their own transcendency. But to the other 90%, these teachings will have no more meaning than the Moonlight Sonata would have for a man of the jungle. Whoosh. That's powerful stuff, Kimberly.
Powerful. It is powerful. And that's truly when we were preparing today, Ken and I, we were going back to this end of this unit 11, this lesson 11, and it was incredibly powerful. And Jim, I'm going to ask you, if you would, to go ahead and read that next paragraph. Where it talks about the residue of balance. And as everybody is listening, if you'll just tune into the words, because there's a lot of layers and wisdom that we'll discuss in just a moment.
The residue of balance.
Unbalance.
Pardon me. The residue of unbalance. There is no unbalance in balance. The residue of unbalance is the answer as to whether there is such a thing as Satan or evil or sin. Everything that man calls bad or evil or sin in his life is due to his own inability to balance his actions or his life. Ignorance of God's presence in him is the cause of that. Therefore, he hurts himself and blames it upon an evil being. As man unfolds his spiritual nature, sin and evil disappear in the measure of that unfolding. Every illuminate has described as the very first symptoms of his illumination that all sense of sin and evil and shame disappear.
All right, those were some big thoughts here. So John, I'm going to ask if you'll just comment on those two paragraphs, and then I'm going to ask Ken to chime in, and we're going to go to Jim and Jackie. What are your thoughts? What would you say to someone who's reading those things for the first time?
Here's what I would say to all of us on the panel and to all of those that are listening to us this evening. What we're taking on is a great responsibility. You know, this message is one of a kind. It's never been delivered in this format as a balanced message of science, love, and human relations. And so the Russells have been able to lay the groundwork for us, give us a picture of where we are collectively as humanity, and a small percentage of us will get it. So if you're willing to take on that responsibility to enlighten yourself, and to the degree that you enlighten yourself, you will enlighten the world. So that's where we are collectively as a group. And, don't let it overwhelm you, but it's a tremendous responsibility to take this knowledge and then to live it and then help our fellow man.
Well, I'll hand it to Jim, but I would even say more than a responsibility, a privilege. To me, it was such a privilege and an honor to find this work and to begin having conversations around it. And I found that was very, very close to my heart. Jim, your thoughts?
The key thought there and the beauty of it is that they've taken us from visualizing effects around us in the outside world and brought us to within ourselves to understand that we are personally capable and responsible for looking inward and finding that divine within ourselves. And they're very clear about it. Even to the smallest degree, as you accomplish this at the smallest degrees and begin to change your thinking, you begin to see evil and bad and pointing of fingers as the mess that it creates. So yes, okay. They're dead on.
All right. I love that. Jackie, you want to chime in about this perspective?
Yeah, I'm having a really hard time with this one because it's like all wrongdoings that come across your path, just dismiss them. And that's a very hard one for me to grasp. And, working on my own balance, and then you see things surrounding you with other people. It's like, well, why don't they get balanced? They look unbalanced. Why aren't they getting the evil and the sin and the shame or whatever? And it's a struggle for me to look at that. not that I'm a vengeful person. It's just I like right action.
You're right.
So when there's to me, balance is right action between two parties, and if the other party is not coming to that balanced situation or encounter or relationship, whatever, then it's still unbalanced.
Okay. Okay. Ken, you have a thought?
Yes, I do. It's not about forgetting about the residue. It's about taking responsibility for the residue, not blaming other people. And I'll tell you one thing for sure, at 70,000 thoughts a day for the average human being, I don't know what anybody's thinking or feeling unless they tell me. So to presume that others are getting away with something and you're not is, again, it's kind of a victim of, unfortunately, a victim position, in my opinion. And I just don't see that as being true. One is that, you know, you look at all the wrongdoings in life, but it's just also like saying, you know, either God's laws of balance, which we're studying right now, rhythmic balance interchange, are absolute or they're not at all. And it applies to everybody and everything. It's not about an individual. So to say that someone isn't getting their up and comings or getting the, you know, what they deserve, or they're doing wrongdoings, I just know that I can't get in that world, because again, the only thing I can change and work on is me. I can't change anybody, and I can't work on anybody, especially if they're not willing. I can't even help them to see what I do. But
Yeah.
I definitely encourage to take responsibility and get out of the idea that somebody's getting away with something that I'm not doing, but they're doing, and it's wrong.
Sure.
That's not God's world.
Well, I actually see both of your perspectives in a big way. And Susan is even saying in the comments, she says, but aren't we the makers of our own problems that we created? And that is a complete yes, Miss Susan. Complete yes. And that's really what the Russell work is about, taking ownership of that. But I do remember feeling that way, Jackie, especially when I was involved with the child trafficking work. And I saw so many people just say, oh, well, it's the darkness that is doing it. It's evil that's doing it. No, it was human beings that were executing every action against a man, a woman, or a child. And so I struggled with that as well, Jackie. And so I've been working hard through this course about remembering that it is a thought wave universe, as John was saying, that we actually create our own destinies. Fair enough, John?
Yes, ma'am. That's what we have to realize. And, you know, it's not finger pointing or looking over this person or somebody got something over on you or whatever. Just like Ken was saying, of those 70,000 thoughts you're going to have today or tomorrow, of those 70,000, which ones will you give a thought body, and which ones will be balanced? Which ones will be loving and giving towards your fellow man? So that's what I would kind of encapsulate this thing into.
Sure. Well, and Rita chimes in saying maybe also using the evil thoughts as a helpful feedback mechanism to let us know when we're out of balance. Very, very good point here, Rita. And I actually want to take us to the last paragraph here on page 220. And then I'll ask Karen, she's got a great video ready for us this evening. But it says, you can see by the tremendous residue of unbalance there is in every human life and every human institution, how very primate the human race is and how far it is from even an approach to unity. And remember, unity is impossible without balanced rhythmic interchange between every transaction of life. So very, very powerful. Karen, do you have a thought before I keep us going on 221?
Yeah, that just kind of goes back to, as I'm working on some of this stuff, when nations do not exchange and there's an equal unbalance, people become either some get rich, some get poor, and we'll never have peace on the earth. So to me, when I see the imbalanced interchange, and that's why I see texts about why there's divorce and so many things where things don't feel right with ourselves, we're not in rhythm, it's not equal. And so, yeah, right. That's what comes to mind as I was working through the stuff.
Sure. So Karen, we've got a great visual journey that Karen's pulled together for later on here in today's broadcast. I want to scroll to the bottom of 221, and we did briefly mention this, and I just think it's a good visual as we continue here. And all of you, I'm going to be asking for some feedback and some questions. So please feel free to place that in there. But if you could, John, just remind everybody, what is this that we're seeing? They were using this as it relates to music, but I'd like everybody to begin thinking about the fact that we live in a thought wave universe. In the wave lies the secret of creation. John, what is this?
Right. So if we look at the graphic, right? So we'll look at letter A, universal rhythm, 1, 2. That is the universal heartbeat. So in that universal heartbeat, it doesn't get any attention, right? So when you take a breath in and out, you don't think about your breathing, your heart beats, right? It pumps and pushes and pulls, and you don't give that a thought. And that's because it's balanced. So if you look at that diagram, right, you see the two hemispheres, right? But what you don't see is the invisible part of the bottom and the invisible part of the top. So those are actually spheres. Now, so you go down to B, right? So we're adding another beat. We're adding another beat to that rhythm, but it in itself, it's still balanced. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. It's kind of a harmonic balance. But woe and behold, man. So you break that one, you go over to the jazz rhythm, and you can see it's all over the place. So that's just the example of the different waves, rhythm, harmony, music, how it ties in. There's no good, bad, or indifferent, but that's just the way it is.
All right, Ken, how do you think Leo would react to music like hip hop and rap and all the other music that has a rather jagged wave pattern these days?
I think she would have been a P. Daddy fan. P. Diddy, I'm sorry, P. Diddy. Peon, I don't know what the hell his name is. Anyway, I think that Leo was protected from what was coming in a way. I hear stories certainly about just when she would come down from the mountain into the little town of Waynesboro, and back even in the 60s and 70s and towards the end of her refolding, which would be the 80s, that it was just to hear music back then just shocked her and was a shock to her system. And basically that I think she would have felt like we were really going to a primate, back to the jungle state, we were at a tipping point like a lot of us feel.
Well, and I think if you think about it, every generation complains about the younger generation's music. Let's just pause for a moment. There's not a generation around that doesn't complain about the new music. And in all fairness, if we were actually look at the wave pattern of the music, it would be that some of it is more jagged, and that's part of why we're just slowing down to bring it to our attention. So I want to ask everybody that's actually on with us tonight, do you ever feel a time that some music that you listen to is unbalanced? And so if you'll answer that in the comment box there. And while we're doing this, I want to just encourage anybody to have questions. We want to take questions throughout the whole entire broadcast if we could. And I'm going to go ahead and have us move over here to the top of the second paragraph on page 222.
Before we do that, can I jump in here for a second?
Yeah. Yes.
Going back to your chart, you all correctly said there is no bad there. If you look at the 1-2 beat of nature, which is the perfect rhythm, that's you sitting silently next to a stream or in your room or reading a book, and you're calm. If someone walks into the room in a waltz mode, you're going to have to either step your thinking up, or they're going to need to step their thinking down, and you'll find balance, going from hot and cold to warm. When you go over to the jazz and the hard rock and those dissipations, there's nothing wrong with those. They're like a Danish or sugar in your coffee. They're fine once in a while. But if you live solely there, it begins to change your inner rhythms and pull you away from center. All these things are part of life, and all these things are to be enjoyed in moderation.
All right.
I want to go back to Leo now and just say that in the writings, it actually states that the jazz thing was absolutely disturbing to the equilibrium of the body and would only stimulate the jungle aspect of ourselves.
If it became a constant, it's all right to keep it there.
Yeah, just the point of it really was that it's very dangerous energy to transmit ourselves and subject ourselves to. So how much you can have or not have is again comes back to the balance, but it is registered. It's very disturbing.
The more you're away from it, the more it will, when you come across it, like you walk into a convenience store and they're playing hip hop, you recognize that that's disturbing to your psyche if you're not used to it. But if you're used to it, you'll start dancing. You know, it's just a different.
I think when you hear those cars driving down the road that are booming that bass, I don't care who you are, it's disturbing your equilibrium. It's a disruption to your senses that you're not inviting in, yet you're being subjected to.
But that is their center.
Karen's got her hand up, so I want to be mindful of that. Karen, your thought here?
Well, just reading the chapter, part of it is interesting because we talk about the drums and the rhythms and the Gregorian chants to the opera. And so if I understand his work, is the more we evolve as society, we have created more complexity. And that complexity creates a greater civilization, it creates more art. So even though when you think about it, when you're young, you really like the hard rock and stuff because you like that. But it's also the evolution of our own souls. As we get older, we don't like it as much. Mm-hmm. We may reflect back on our own generational part that we like, but again, it's not only it's a youthful to age one, as well as it as a civilization, and the more complexity something is, like something like activating the genius and actually helping the genius because they're the ones that actually advance civilization. Sure. It's that, again, advancing that complexity and actually appreciating it.
Well, if you think about it in our life, if you want to look at it from our youth to as we get older, as our youth, we have actually less complexity, meaning that we have less responsibilities. As we get older, we're handling a lot more responsibilities. So we have less tolerance for unbalanced things because it shakes up our equilibrium. So if you were thinking about that, as far as that's why so many of us will go to more silence. Bonnie makes a lovely comment, says, makes you wonder what the Russells would have thought about country Western music.
I kind of like it. I like the balance.
Tolerated it.
Well, John Denver visited Leo. He was a Russell student. So,
well, there you go. There you go. So here's Rita says, thank you, Jackie. One thing I do not care for is going to restaurants and stores that play disruptive music. If the music feels unbalanced, I remove myself from it. And I appreciate that, Rita, because I think that's what a real lesson for all of us here. Part of why I wanted to go back to this segment is what we're all being invited to do is recognize balance in the universe and unbalance in the universe. Because when we recognize that, we learn how to move ourselves into balance more often. Would you say that's true, John, as we go to the top of 222?
I would.
So okay. So what I'm looking at is if you could read the top part of that says, we still continue to say.
Absolutely. We still continue to say to our students that the entire principle of creation, with all of its secrets, lies in every wave unit of light. We cannot teach you anything beyond that, for there is nothing to know beyond it. All of the knowledge you can or will acquire does not exceed the knowledge of how to reach the balance amplitude of the wave in your every transaction and in your life, and return to the stillness of its beginning for repetition. Your life is just a series of experiments in trying to learn that lesson. Civilization as a whole is also trying to
stop there, John. So I want to have you go back. So that your life is a series of experiments in trying to learn that lesson. James, if we could scroll back to the image. So John, translate this, if you would, from music to us walking our life, or living our life right now. Is the goal for us all to be able to figure out how to live that version A?
You know, Leo made or shared with me a great thought, is that, you know, we want to live a balanced, happy, joyous, loving life, right? And we don't want to put all these restrictions on ourselves to where we forget that we're here to enjoy life. Okay. So again, there's no right or wrong. And Jim made the point, you know, it's okay to dabble over there. And if you want to tap your knee to a country song, or if you want to just, blow your brains out with different kinds of music, great. And like they said, it's just all episodes of learning, right?
Yeah.
Trial and error. And eventually we'll all get to the same point. But I want to go back to something, if I may, Kimberly.
Please.
Is that we never mentioned the 1,000 years away yet. And I thought that was important to kind of give us to know where we are, where mankind will be as a whole, and then that'll allow us to play our role in how we can accelerate and add to that advancement. So anyway, I know that was a little off subject. But.
No, I appreciate that very much. So I'm glad to hear about balance, because I can't give up my 80s music. So as long as I balance my 80s music for the Moonlight Sonata, I should be okay.
Yeah, you want to live.
It's not on an 8-track though, is it?
Hang on. You want to live in A.
It's an 8-track.
Just a minute, John.
You want to hang on a second. You want to live in A in your daily life, and in your home and in your works. You want to move through life and work in B, in rhythm with other things, and the 1, 2, 3 beat makes you want to move, and then you want to play occasionally in C, but you don't want to live in C.
Okay.
You don't want to live in B. You want to live in A.
Okay. I'm with you on that. So Ken picked me up from the airport the other night, and I knew it was true love when he had an iced tea ready for me, and he actually had 80s on the radio because he knew that made me happy. So he got a lot of points. So that was after
such a nice guy, man. I'm telling you.
Hey, Ken, just when we're ready to give up on you, you do something like that.
Hey, man, I just want you to know, I put Moonlight Sonata on, I put it on repeat, and that's all I listen to all day long, 24 hours a day.
Yes, he does.
Beautiful.
I will.
Well, like what I think what we're hearing here is interesting enough. It comes back to that RBI, rhythmic, balance, interchange. It's all about balance. And we must be careful when we enter that stage, because it can get that barbaric side of us going. That's the
Karen?
Yeah, I think the one thing that they are saying, the entire principle of creation was the wave of light. I just want to go back to remember that in that wave of light is the chemistry, is the rhythm of the wave, is the color of the wave, is the chemistry of the wave, and it is also the color of your food. It's a color of your mood. It's a color of your chakras. So understanding all of these things. That was me. I turned it off. I don't know. I had to restart my computer, and it's like now everything's back on. I have to turn it all back off again. Sorry about that. Anyway, within that, the whole idea is everything is in the wave. Everything, our thoughts are in the wave. Our moods are in the wave. Our chemistry is in the wave. The way we attract with each other is still in it's all in the wave.
Yes. I 100% agree. Okay, so we're inching close to our very first break, but I want to mention a couple of things. We would like to ask everyone who is listening here tonight, please understand that for every broadcast, we have anywhere between 50 and 100 people that stay on with us. And you don't see that on all the numbers of where you might be, because it's broadcast across TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and very, very exciting. Very, very exciting as far as understanding that. Now, what I would like to I would like to find out who in the audience does have a copy of their home study course. So we wanted to get a feel for how many of you have it. So if you'll let us know that, because I want to remind you all, if you would, on page 223.
They're going to let us know. They're going to give us a thumbs up in the comment.
So while they're doing that, on page 223, I wanted to bring your attention to this second paragraph, because it was a really important one. I'm not going to read it there, but it was very important talking about the one idea of creation. So I know we have one person who's got their home study course. So thank you. And I'll come to those other comments in just a moment. I do want to scroll down, James, to where I have it highlighted, because I wanted to bring something up to everyone. We encourage everyone to get a copy of their home study course. Linda's got hers as well. Deb has hers. And I'll ask John for a moment to comment on this. But Leo and Walter said this: we will devote the 9 following units to the giving of this higher knowledge of man's greatest unknown secret of sensation and consciousness to you, and as simple words and diagrams as possible. All right. So we've got a lot of people. So John, why is it valuable to have a copy of this home study course? I have mine here. I carry it with me all the time. There's 12 of these little units. Do know that there are scholarships available to it. You can certainly email me, faith@philosophy.org. And for the rest of you, we have a link there below. But John, why is it important?
Here's the thing. For right now, it may not be imperative for those listening to have a home study course in front of them because they're listening to us read it and discuss it. Okay. But this is not for us. Okay. This is for our audience. This is for them to have their own personal home study course because, and I want to say this over and over and over again, it is a personal journey.
It is.
This is a course in self study. You know, we're not here to read it and describe it and so on for everybody. That's between them and God. And remember, you know, the Russells would say that when you have God as your teacher, you need no earthly teachers. So you have to trust in that. You have to develop your own sense of what it is. So without a home study course, you know, whatever we say this evening, by the time you wake up tomorrow, you're going to forget what we said, and you'll have nothing to reference it to. You'll have nothing to open up and reread and go to. So it's imperative that you have your own personal home study course.
James, thank you, John. James, if we'll go to the panel here. And what we also want to recommend is we know a lot of people are cranking along with us and they're very excited. I see that one of you has received the home study course, but you're getting one per month. So know that you'll be catching up soon enough. No worries. Thrilled that you have less than one. I do want to mention to you that for some people who feels sometimes too heavy, don't hesitate that you can just go back and listen to snippets of these videos. That's part of what we're doing is we're actually building a library that you can come and listen to 15 minutes at a time, 30 minutes at a time. Deb brings up a very, very good point. She says this, with the home study course, it grows with you as you grow in understanding. We read it over and over again. And Deb, I'm right there with you. After all these years, that's what so many of us on here do as well. So it is time for our first break. What we're going to do when we return is we're going to dive into lesson 12. So do know that, everybody. That's where we're going next. We'll have our quote up on the screen. Thank you so much, John, for your wise words there. And take your 3 minutes break, stretch, get some water, and listen to the music. We'll see you in 3.
Anika.
And a special thanks to James as he pulls together the music and things for us. I did see someone ask a question about, are we suggesting that you just play something like the Moonlight Sonata or one song on repeat? Not necessarily that kind of thing, Sharon. What we're talking about is everyone to answer, to become much more aware of where they're imbalanced. So Jim would like to start with answering a question before we dive into lesson 12. Jim's on mute. Okay.
Oh, hang on. Okay. I want to answer Akita. I believe it's pronounced Akita's question. Aika?
Anika.
Anika, thank you. Anika, when it comes to karma and pre-planning things we will deal with prior to coming here, that's a common theme, as you pointed out, and people have had near-death experiences. So let's look at this whole thing very briefly about karma. We could go on for hours about this. But karma is like all things. It's not a negative. It's not a positive. It's a thought or action that we released into the world while we were embodied, that we either balanced or didn't balance. Some of the things that we do while we're embodied bring back what they call dharma, which are good blessings to our life. Some bring back karma because it's our job as the issuer of that thought or action to balance it. Most of us have had multiple lifetimes. So there's a lot of unbalanced issues out there. So as we come from lifetime to lifetime, it's a rare soul that has reached such a level of understanding that they will take all their karma on at once. So they will choose to deal with things that they need to deal with. I know I got to wrap this, but keep it simple. There are people who come here and take on karmic loads that they are going to help somebody else with that has a heavy load. They choose to do that. So don't judge people when you see someone suffering or dealing with heavy karma. Don't think that that's necessarily theirs to carry. And there's also 4 levels of karma. There's personal karma. There's family karma.
Yeah, way out of print.
Yeah,
Pardon?
Go ahead. You can finish the answer, and then we're heading to lesson 12.
There's community karma and there's world karma. And so world karma, we all deal with, whether we were involved in bringing it about or not, because we're here. It's like not everybody that went on the Titanic was meant to die on the Titanic. They just were on that ship. Down you go. So there's a brief statement of karma. But yes, we do have the ability to choose the things that we most feel we need to deal with.
Yes. So part of our challenge here as a panel is that we know that we're talking about overall secrets of the universe and very large things, large concepts. And we encourage everybody to keep asking questions because we want to honor you, everyone who is asking the questions. We try to stay pure to the Russell work right now, but we will answer questions. But do know that that's always the toggling that we are doing. I love the way Susan, kudos to you. I have my own home study course because I'm old school. I like paper and pen and I love to highlight. I'm right there with you, Susan. Deb talks about music being part of her creative space, changes music according to her mood and energy. And she listed some of those out there. And so all of you are certainly a lot of good comments here. So I'm going to ask if we could, because of timing, go on to lesson 12, because we actually, lesson 12, starting here on 225, I want to go ahead to that first paragraph highlighted. And this is what they started with, is they were talking about, it's very gratifying to have felt the change in the trend of thinking as our students advance into later units. When students begin to take this course, they think in the language of their traditional training, which has always been directed toward the development of the outer senses. Our efforts are to awaken the inner perception, not the outer. Our purpose is to illumine the mind, not to inform the body. And we seek to make our students aware of their immortality, which dwells within their mortal body and controls it. So Ken, you talk a lot about helping people to get more focused on that inner perception instead of their outer senses. So what do you want to say as we go into this particular lesson?
Yeah, the inner part of our lives, to me, is what we're talking about, is, setting that stated intention in motion first thing in the morning and starting to discover, what is my inner life? What does that mean? It's about how this comes from self-honesty to self. Do I have imbalanced thinking? Do I have dysfunctional thoughts? Am I hanging on to childhood trauma? Do I use it as my identity? Is it something that I consistently bring up? Therefore, I'm reliving my past, and my past will be my future because I keep reliving it. That's my inner life. It's all about how I'm processing the world I live in. And exposure is the key, right? The first stage is what's going on inside of me. And that self will not reveal self to self in the world that I've come from, right? That means that selfish self, that part of each and every one of us that's just thinking about ourselves, doesn't reveal, oh, I'm in selfish self right now. We don't see it that way. That's where pride steps in and justifies whatever it is we're doing. So learning our inner life is learning to accept, like the 7 deadly sins: pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth. What does that mean to me, not you, right? How do I act in pride? How do I act in greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth? That's learning about my true inner self. And we call that, in recovery, we call that an inventory of who am I? Like, right? What are the good things and what are the bad things? And that's about what that inner self is finding out what can I work on, what do I want to work on, and what's holding me down that's inside me, not outside.
Okay, well, and so I want to go on to the top of page 226 where it's highlighted in yellow, and I'm going to ask John to comment. And it says here, as students advance to the 5th or 6th units, they find themselves thinking differently. And the words which express that different thinking become more and more familiar to them as they gradually become more transformed from outer thinking to inner thinking. And so, John, if you would comment to that, and then I see Karen is commenting. Thank you so much there in the chat box as well. So, John, what happens to someone's thinking as they go through this home study course?
Well, what's happening is the Russells are trying to make people aware that they're not just a body. Okay, they are an immortal soul. They are a God being. And that thought alone paralyzes people. Leo said the most difficult thing for any person in the world is to accept their divinity and then live it. So that's what they're trying to do here, is to get people to make that separation, okay, that you are mind, not body. The mind controls the body, not the opposite. And throughout the lessons, then they will reinforce that transition for our seekers of light.
All right, now Karen, you are going through the home study course for the first time as well. So even though you have been familiar with the Russell work, you yourself are experiencing it like many of the students that are here in our panel, that are here in our broadcast. What are you learning as you go through and read this? And then I'm going to take us to the next paragraph on page 226. What does it mean for you?
It's been a different experience for me. So before it was more about the science, and this is more about literally the science of the mind, the science of the spirit, and to really go more within, to be quiet within. But it also reminds me of what I have been doing with the work that I've done, where I do listen. I love working at night because at night it's quiet and I can hear spirit, and it's like working in a flow. So I'm in a flow, and I stay in bed a little bit later in the morning because it's where I get my guidance. So I do listen, and it just reminds me of being mindful, listening, kind of being in a prayer all the time, in a sense of being much more conscious of the voices, that still voice that they talk about. And so for me, that's been the beautiful part. It's not just my initial question as a kid was, how does God create? So I kind of got that, but that doesn't mean how do I create? It was like I looked at all the other stuff out there as opposed to myself in here. So for me, that's been a really nice transition.
Okay, I love that sentiment. And before I have us go to 226, John wanted to answer a question about the repetition of the sonata.
Yes, I saw that was one of our comments or questions from the audience, and I apologize, I didn't catch the name. But if that person has the home study course in front of them, if you'll go to the middle of page 227, and the Russells will explain to you why that is so important. Okay, and it's amazing, and how they explain to you in the silence that Beethoven discovers that. Yes, I mean, that is so powerful right there.
Why don't we do that, John? So scroll up just a little bit, James. And so this is one of the attempts at the end of each unit. What the Russells have done is they take questions. And so scroll up a little bit more, because the question from the student was this: I wish you would explain more what you mean by inner vision, inner eyes, and inner ears. I've always felt that those were terms for pure metaphor and had no actual meaning in the sense implied, which is that people actually hear sounds which are not there to hear and see things that are not there to see. As I study your course, I begin to realize to you, they're not metaphor. To you, people actually can see and hear what is not there to see and hear. That is what I wish you would make more clear. So, John, why don't you go ahead and dive into the answer since you brought it up?
Yes. If I could just read that, would that be all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, please.
The best way to answer that question is by exemplifying it. Let us take Beethoven for our first example. He has eyes and ears on his body just as you have. Somebody speaks to you, which Beethoven could hear with his ears if he stood beside you as well as you could. You both hear the sounds equally. Now, imagine yourself sitting near Beethoven. Everything is silent, but Beethoven hears sounds coming out of that silence which you do not hear. He hears glorious, inspiring, uplifting sounds which you cannot possibly hear. Pretty soon, he takes a pencil and a sheet of music manuscript and writes down what he hears. Even then, you cannot hear it, but he can. He then sits at the piano and translates the sounds which he heard within the silence into sound that you can now hear with the ears of your body. So, the Moonlight Sonata for our panel, we all joke about it and we all love it, and we know it's the most beautiful, balanced piece of music ever written. And so for us to put the Moonlight Sonata on repeat, it's no big deal because it's there. You're not consciously listening to it. It's balancing your every thought and every cell in your body. And so you talk about a healing modality. If I were working in those arts, I guarantee you I'd have people listening to the sonata on repeat to help balance them. So
fair enough. Well, let's continue with this conversation, though, because I think this is very important. Karen sees and hears very much as I do as well. And I think the more your consciousness grows, that certainly happens more and more. I'd like to go to the top of 228 where you see I have the highlight.
Karen, Kim, can I say one thing to back
Sure.
John up on that? It's very short. In a letter to his father, Mozart wrote the following words, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is close. Father, I hear music, that there are not instruments upon which we could play it.
Wow.
That's an example of that.
Wow.
Wow. Isn't that a thought? Isn't that a thought? So let's go over here to the top of 228 here. Because this goes now, it's taking that same idea of the composer to an engineer. And I thought that was really powerful here. That engineer over in the corner, for example, can see the four arches of a great bridge, which he has created out of the silence and nothingness of space. He is so engrossed in it that he has become what he has termed absent-minded. That's not an appropriate term, for the fact is just the reverse, for he has become fully minded instead of being sensed. I thought that was a really neat story. I wanted to ask the panel if someone would like to comment on that here, because I thought that was a very practical application. And Karen, and then I'll go to someone. Let me know who wants to go to next. Karen.
A few of us went to the Tesla Tech Conference, and I got a really interesting call today from an inventor. And one of his buddy inventors said he just went into a quiet space and downloaded 47 patents.
Wow.
So when you do that, when you're in the flow and you're connected and the universe wants to bring something forward, it will bring something forward. And I think it's a time that we're moving into a greater age and a greater advancement for civilization. But being still and listening to us, they keep telling you it's all there. Just ask and receive. And every great invention comes from those aha moments, from those dreams and stuff. So or being in the flow. So yeah, just have to listen and just be a little, yeah. Sometimes I gotta have to take a nap so I can shut my civil off.
Shut it off. Shut off the phone. Yes, Jackie.
Yes, I think it's the creative process. I mean, how many times, were we scolded for looking out the window at school?
Right.
In our minds, we're creating this whole scenario and, whatever it is that we were thinking. And then we're instantly brought back. Pay attention, remember and repeat. And so this engineer was like, he was looking, he was designing, he was seeing the ins and outs of what goes into it, what it needs. That's the creative process. Tesla did that. Tesla did and
Tesla was getting things from the ether all the time. That it was like he was receiving.
Yeah.
Well,
and I think we all do it to some level. We all do it.
That's what I wanted to ask everyone who is listening right now. If you would place in the chat box, what have you created? Have you created a meal that you thought of that wasn't out there before? Have you created an outfit, a pattern, an event? What have you created out of this process here of things that you necessarily nobody else could see or hear it, but you could see or hear it? So I'm curious if you would place that in. And then I'm going to ask Ken, if you would, we're going to go over here to page 228. And I'd like to go to that paragraph that has the blue brackets, James. And it talks about you really live a physical or material life. If you would share that paragraph, Ken, please.
Sure. You really live a physical or material life and a spiritual, immaterial one at the same time. The spiritual life is the creative one, and the physical life is the one which works with one's body to give form to the mind creations of those who have inner vision. So it really helps us to understand what we're doing here in terms of that the body is a tool, right, that we use to make our creative expressions that come to us in that mindful state. I'm going to go back to a little bit of what Jackie was talking about. I had mentioned it before, in terms of meditation. It's like daydreaming. When you're daydreaming, your mind is not empty, it's full. And therefore, there are no parts, because that's what a daydream means. And it's innate in us. If you think about why do we daydream, because the literally the inner world is calling to you, saying, you got to get out of the outer world and just drift off. And children do that. They're like, hey, come back, go stop daydreaming. What are you doing? You're not focusing. And that's, again, stamping out the genius in them, because they're in the mind world. They're in their imagination. And we're saying, hey, come back. You got to go to classroom. Look at the chalkboard. Remember this. Compare it that. And we don't realize. And the same thing with ourselves. If you don't think you're a meditator, just think about daydreaming. And remember, when you daydream, in terms of that, what we talk about is, remember, the state of God's mind is a perpetual state of ecstasy. And so is yours when you're one with that mind. So in order to get into that state, it's just desire to know ecstasy in this moment. And usually the greatest way, the rhythm to get there is love. So love, right now, you got to remember something. Mozart also knew how to write music, knew how to read it, trained himself to be able to hear that music. The music was always there, but if he hadn't learned how to write, Mozart, as it's saying there, can write the notes on that musical chart. He can hear the music without being played in his mind. So that's a lot of training when you go back to that Renaissance time. And yet we look at, why don't we focus? We're such an evolved civilization. Why are we not doing that anymore? Where is the Renaissance? I was talking to Kimberly about that. When have we created a great genius since the early 1900s? Quite frankly, we mentioned Tesla, we mentioned Russell, we mentioned Walt Whitman, we can talk about Mark Twain, but where are the greats today? Where are these mystics, these minds that are going beyond where man has ever gone before, and bringing back that inspiration and those ideas? And that's what this movement's about, is awakening that inner genius in each and every one of us to realize Beethoven and Mozart were no different than you or me. The only thing that separated them was their desire to hear and know music was greater than mine and yours, because of what they produced, not because of what they thought, but what they actually produce. So those actions become real important. The spiritual is there to help you manifest through the physical.
Well, and so let's honor some of the creations that are in our chat box here. Susan says, I love to draw and create colorful mandalas. So therapeutic. Deb talks about my book series for young readers and adults based on the Russell teachings, and they come in a spiritual flow of manifestation. Love that, Deb. Please place the links to your books that are for children there. We want to celebrate you. Deborah says, I create something new every day, and my responses to life and what shows up in every moment. And Deborah, that really reminds me of something I did in one of the programs at the museum with John 2 years ago, was that every day is like a brand new canvas. Isn't it, John? Every day when we wake up, this is a canvas of our life. What are we going to paint on it?
That's it. I was just getting ready to say those words, Kimberly. Beautiful. Yes.
I would go even further to say that every thought you have is a brushstroke to the image of what your life is going to be or not be. Thus, the thoughts become very important, that they're harmonious and balanced. We come back to that balance. If I have imbalanced thoughts, I'm going to paint ugly strokes of the image of my day and thus my life. If you don't like the way you're feeling, you just heard it, because the brush strokes you're using, those thoughts, are not harmonious and colorful. They're dark and dull, and they're leaving you in that dark and dull state.
Jackie, I'm coming to you in just a minute. Bonnie says, mosaicing and sewing after cooking meals for 50 plus years. Things pop into my head when I'm not thinking about it because I've opened my mind for it. I absolutely love that, Bonnie. Jackie, what did you want to add?
Yes.
Well, it was kind of a takeoff from Ken's comment about where are these geniuses now? They're here. They're just being hidden because we're being bombarded by everything around us to suppress it. Don't recognize the genius. Don't do that. Listen to what we have to say. I'm sorry. That's just, it really is that. But I'm trying to go beyond it and rebel against it, or before something, before creativity, before opening and recognizing someone else's genius. These young people who are badgering themselves because they think they're bad people because they're not getting the mainline stream. They want to follow their own inner genius, and they're being taught that that's not the way to go. It's like,
You're right.
That goes back to Walter Russell's work, where he talks about do not do that repetitive thing where you can answer $64,000 with the $64,000 question, because that is not genius.
That's right.
Genius is when you're actually listening to that inner voice of God and you're manifesting and having. And I want to put people think of genius as only like the super geniuses that create things, but genius comes in art. Genius comes in music. Genius comes in athletes. Genius comes in the creative tapestry. Genius is when you open up yourself to a creative idea across a great big spectrum. So I think the problem is when we think of genius, it isn't everyone when you can activate it and you're not, as you say, Jackie, clustered and put into a little box. So I there's plenty of it out there. It always surprises me everywhere I travel. There's plenty of it.
There is. You're 100% right. Love the conversation tonight. Deborah has a comment. She said, it's truly an honor to be here in physical form. So let me do that really slowly because some of us lose sight of that. It is truly an honor to be here in physical form, dancing with the physical and spiritual realms constantly, with the ultimate goal of bringing those realms back together in absolute unity.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Beautifully said.
Deborah can sit in for me next week.
And Susan, you had some gracious comments. Love to hear the conversation in that. And every new day, as Susan says, I've been given a clean slate of daily repeat. So I want to bring something up to us. If we think about each day as a canvas, okay, because Walter's artwork, it was so incredibly beautiful. And for some of us, we have painted over our canvas over and over and over again. So perhaps there's a time that we think about maybe this next chapter of our life, this next season of our life, maybe we need a new canvas. Just a question for the group, just a question. So I wanted to have us answer one more question before we go to our next break. I'd like to go to the top of 229, please, James. And the question, Walter and Leo really big about answering questions from students. That's part of why this is so important to keep that here, is some people claim that an idea must be fully conceived in one's mind before trying to give it a body. And others say that all bodies are created by the process of reasoning, which means one step at a time, in which each step you take tells you what the next step should be. Will you comment on this for my enlightening? So, John, if you would, please read that next paragraph or two.
Yes. And the Russells say, every idea must first be conceived as a mind creation before becoming the body form of that idea. Bodies unfold from their seed patterns. The whole of the oak is in the seed of it. The oak does not just start as a part of an idea and then add more and more to it. The whole idea is in its conception, and all of it is enfolded in the mind record of that idea, which we call a seed. One creates only that which one knows, and he creates through mind control over body. But what we mean that every brushstroke which is added to any unfolding idea is done knowingly and not reasoned experimentally. I will share a comment that Leo shared with Jim and I. And, she never wanted us to feel that we couldn't do something, or if we had to ask permission, or what, should we try this or this or that. And Leo would share with us that it will come to you in the doing of it. And I think that's very appropriate to the part of that paragraph which we just read. It will come to you and it will build on itself. Just trust in God, trust in yourself, and just let it happen. And that's the beauty of creativity, of creating. Some people listen to it, some people don't.
Yeah, therein lies a big nugget of truth there. All right, it is time. It's top of the hour. It's time for another quick break. When we return, we are going to go to the question that is on page 231 to give our panel a heads up. For everybody else, please stand up, stretch, breathe, get some oxygen, and enjoy. We'll see you in 3 lovely minutes.
Need something, babe?
All right, if you can hear us, you'll find your way back. So I don't know about you, but it sure does seem like time is flying by here today. Lots of good discussion. And before we go and continue with lesson 12, James, I'm going to ask you if you can get ready to share some of the comments that we've received on previous videos. Are you ready? James is working on that now. So we take all James.
Hi, everyone.
All right.
I'm ready.
Yes, please.
All right. So, yeah, give me just a moment. And yeah, I just wanted to share some of the lovely comments that we've been getting for the past 15 shows that we've done. This is our 15th show.
Wow.
And
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah, we've been at it for a while. So give me just one moment. I'll pull those up. All right, here we go. So this is our little back office on YouTube that shows us. These are just comments from YouTube. So some of you are watching from YouTube, some of you are watching from Facebook or Twitch or all of the million platforms that exist nowadays. But I just wanted to share a few of the comments just to thank everyone for joining us on this journey. So we got a comment here from Tanya in Orlando. I'm really enjoying the course. I can better understand things that I was studying on my own. I appreciate the opportunity that you were offering. At first, I found it strange that in Karen's video, red had longer wavelengths. And blue a greater concentration of waves, higher frequency. But thinking about it, I imagine in red concentration, the structure is more rigid, without movement, dense. In radiation, the movement is greater, free, expanded, and consequently the space is larger. This is a question that maybe somebody could hand. I haven't even read this comment until just now. Maybe this is someone could answer this in a moment, but I'll move on to a few others.
Can I?
Let's go ahead and
sure.
move to the other. Let's go ahead and move to the other comments first, please. Go ahead. And
all right. So I started the home study. This is from Molly H9259. I started the home study course in April, but just found your channel. This series has made me feel more like part of a family of souls where I can learn from those that are wiser. Thank you. I also admire the organized and artful way that you are presenting the message. So that's, a big plus to Kim and the rest of the panel. Just listened for a second time. This comment's from Jeannie or Jean, I'm not sure. Jean Hall, 3226. Just listened for the second time. If Kim and Jim were not clarifying and softening the content, I would have given up by now. Thank you. Thank each of you for your contribution.
Loving all of us there. She's loving all of us. Keep going.
That's you could have just bypassed that one, James.
I'll pay her later.
That's why Kim wanted me to read the comments for that. All right, we've got a lot more really good ones, but I'll just share. We've got some negative comments too, which happens.
I met Leo at Swannanoa when I was 20. She spoke to me for 2 hours. It was magical. It was magical.
Yeah.
All right.
Who was that? Back up a little bit, James.
That was Grace on the York.
On the York.
Grace on the York 1424. Yep.
Well, she's we know what age she is.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So, just wanted to say a gracious thank you to everybody, and then we'll ask some panel members. Karen, you wanted to quickly comment because I'm going to keep us going over here on page 231. Yes.
Well, you think the man is the seed, so he's not as dense. Women actually manifest the seed. The woman is the one that actually takes matter, the matter. And just think of your belly. When you have a baby in there, it takes that matter and takes those particles and condenses it into a baby. That's incredible. So the wavelength of the blue to the red is the density between a thought and the manifestation of an idea.
Okay. Any of our seasoned Russell students want to comment on that one?
I'm good with it.
Okay.
I would get into science and get scolded, so I'll
We're trying to save people. All right. So Ken, I'm going to ask you if we're going to go over here to 231. And if you'll read the question, please, talking about what does inspiration mean as James brings that up. 231. Yep, right there. Thank you, James. Scroll up. Ken, you're on mute. You're on mute, Ken. All right, great. Go ahead.
Yes.
Ken, can you join us?
I'm with you. I'm reading. If you guys would pipe down for a second, that definition shows how little idea of talking to God is understood. For that is what inspiration is. It is the language which God uses to talk to man. Early writers spoke of the Bible as an inspired work. It meant that certain prophets or mystics had supernatural powers which enabled them to interpret God's commands and instructions. That is not literally true, for it is not supernatural. It is natural for everyone will in time discover their own divinity and be able to talk to God at will from moment to moment. And that's the ultimate goal that we're all arriving at. And the inspiration we're talking about is much of what you've heard here in conversation. If you're a cook, think about it. You put love into your food. Anything you put love into is an inspirational concept. That's an inspirational action. It comes from inspiration, right? I want to make a great meal so everybody likes what they eat and they can taste the love that I put into the food. So you can taste love, taste when things are done in a masterful way. So inspiration can be manifested in everything we do. Washing your car, right? Some people just wash it and leave it kind of dirty, and then some people wash it and they make it immaculate. Some people clean their house, but they don't keep it real clean. But we all talk about how nice it is to come home to a bed that's made and it's harmonious and it feels welcoming, as opposed to the bed disheveled and not made. So those kinds of inspirations that we're talking about can be happening in everything we do in life. It's not just set aside to make a masterpiece of music or art. Those are what we call geniuses, and the culture of our life comes from those things. That's why we look at this culture stuff. But inspiration is a beautiful thing that everybody has the right to, everybody is born into, and you do inspired things. It's finding those things that inspire you. I think that is so important. And I'm inspired because I'm taking the actions to follow through. That's how I know inspiration. Remember, an idea is just an idea until you give it form, whether it's cooking, whether it's cleaning, whether it's creating a new symphony. It doesn't matter. If you don't give it form, then the idea just remains in the ideal world. But inspiration to me is always followed by action. When I'm inspired, I want to take an action.
I love that. And I'm going to have John comment in just a minute. Karen, if you'll please check the private chat. So John, what is your comment to that?
I wanted to, because this is speaking on inspiration. Earlier in the morning, I was on the History Channel, and they were doing the creation of the Statue of Liberty and the artist behind it and the involvement of the French and America and so on, and how it would be built, and all the hurdles that were put in front of this artisan, but he never gave up. He just kept creating. And the Statue of Liberty at the time was the largest statue ever attempted in the world.
Wow.
And towards the end, he was you have to forgive me, I can't think of the artisan at the moment. But anyway, in this depiction, he's on a boat and he heard of the difficulties the Americans were having in building the Statue of Liberty and this and that. So he gets on a boat and he's heading to America. And in this scene, one of his friends is talking to him, and the artisan is kind of facing to his side, and he's all depressed and so on and so forth, like this thing it's just not going to happen. And all of a sudden, the fog disappears, and this guy is staring at this beautiful, brand new penny-colored Statue of Liberty. And he yells at the artisan to look. And he stands up, he turns and looks. And that inspiration, just that image, it gave me goosebumps to where I thought my body was like 3 feet off the damn couch, that I was going to have to push myself back down. It was such an inspiring image, and to have the background into having it built and so on. And it'll be a lasting symbol forever. It's one of the greatest and the most known symbols throughout the world. So that goes to show you that he didn't give up on that inspiration. He didn't give up on that idea, even though there were just hurdle after hurdle thrown at him.
Beautiful.
It was
Absolutely
remarkable.
Beautiful. When we think about how we all have inspirations like that. So I do want to comment. Say Rita said, "Thank you, Ken, for bringing that into our everyday lives." And so I wanted to pass that comment along as well. So we appreciate all the comments, and feel free to ask questions as we go along. You know, what's always difficult right now as I look at where we are in the broadcast, there were 2 big questions that I wanted to cover, but I'm not sure time's going to permit. But I do want to bring it up to everybody who is studying the home study course. So on the bottom of page 232, there is a very important question. talking about how they were actually brought up in a family which believes implicitly in prayer. Implicitly in prayer. So there's the question. You'll see, scroll up a bit. You'll see, right, and it's a very, very long question, talks about all the things in the family that had to do with prayer, and wanted to know why prayers didn't seem to be answered. And John, I thought it'd be helpful for us to at least refer to a few things here on the answer in page 233. Don't feel like you have to read every sentence, but there are some really important things because lots of people get confused about this notion of prayer.
Yeah, well, you know, it's kind of a touchy subject in a way. You know, everybody has their own technique and their own thing and what they feel is, you know, prayerful in their minds and so on and so forth. But so remember this, prayer is a very powerful thing, and collectively it's even more powerful. Like thinking, like minds. That's how that works. And as we get into the science, there also is a proof to you why collective prayer and that kind of thing is so powerful. But remember this, if you're just going to sit at a table and you're going to verbalize, thank you, God, for the food, thank you for the land, thank you for the guy that did this and that, it just falls on deaf ears. God's not listening. You don't need to talk to God about it. But if you want to thank God for it, take a moment of silence, center yourself, and just do it, you know, without words. All right, just have it be a thoughtful thing. So, and that's the way prayer works.
Well, that's what I want to bring up on 233 there, John, because there in the home study course, it actually says a couple of things to people. If you'll scroll down there to the answer where the yellow highlights are, James, thank you. And it talks about your faith that he will just drop the answer to your prayers in your lap is not God's way of doing. You should read God Will Work With You, but Not For You. We'll show you that book in just a moment. You can order it at philosophy.org, for it will give you a full answer to your question. But we will say this as a brief answer. God will give to you as much as you give to him and no more. So if we would, I'm going to ask James to pull up that image. And if you do order something from the philosophy.org, we ask that you please put in, you can have a discount code. It's faith in all capital letters 20, faith 20. It will give you a discount and it will track you back the fact that you came from the broadcast here. But I'd ask the panel, Jim, why do you like this book?
God will work with you, but not for you. It's beauty and its simplicity. And that's prayer, the prayer that they're talking about, and you've touched on it, and John touched on it beautifully, both of you did, is that you have to be actively involved in bringing it about. You have to see it as in the process of coming your way. I think one of the biblical statements, it was yours before you asked. This is true. The universal one is complete and whole in everyone. And when you ask something of that universal one within you, it's yours, but you must put forth the effort to manifest it. I'll give a real brief one on a truck that I needed for the farm. I literally sat in thought and prayer and asked the Creator. I said, I'd like to have a truck, but I can't spend more than $2,000 for that truck. And I need it to be a flatbed, not a pickup truck. And if possible, I would like it in silver or white. 24 hours later, I'm driving home from the University of Science and Philosophy, and I drive past a yard and sitting up, this is a high yard with a farmhouse behind it, sitting up in front of that farmhouse in the yard is a silver flatbed truck with a great big sign on it saying, for sale, $2,000. I was talking to Jackie on the phone. I mentioned it to her. She said, turn around and go back and buy it, because that you can't, so yes, you can manifest very quickly, but you have to know it's yours. You have to accept that it's yours and then work to make it happen.
I think that's beautiful. And so I wanted to let you know that right now, I don't know why the code is not working. So I will check on that. There must be a glitch in the season, but I love that, Jim. And I know me coming from a Southern culture, we were just taught that you pray and things will pop into your lap. So I have heard many people say, please make me healthy. And then they continue to eat bonbons throughout the night. So it was an issue of, are we working with God? So I think that's incredibly, incredibly powerful. So Ken, I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to come back to Jackie. If you will scroll down here to 234, and I have.
Yeah, but I'd just like to make a mention on that prayer thing in terms of what what we're hearing here. And Jim kind of covered it. There's two parts to prayer, right? There's the petition, which is the raising of our hearts to seek that which we're looking for, and then there's the performance. Without the performance, the prayer doesn't work, which is what Jim was talking about. Two parts to prayer. There's the petition, right? The raising of the heart of things I'm desiring, and then the performance come, as Jim's saying, is now you walk knowing that's what will happen. And as we've talked about, if you want to become a painter, don't just wait to read a book, paint this way and paint that way. Start painting, and then you are becoming a painter. If you want to write a book, you want to be a writer, they say if you're not writing, you're not a writer. But if you're writing, then you're a writer. And if you're painting, then you're a painter. In terms of that, that's the right. God, I want to be a painter. Can you help me to understand the color palettes a little better? The performance would be I'm going to go study color palettes and start playing with it to see how I can make those blends. So two parts to prayer, right? The petition and the performance.
I'm going to say, I'm going to pipe in for a second, because over and over again for me, if I just had to move and I needed a miracle, and I got the miracle, but it was, I have to look and do, and then the miracle will show up. If I sit and just wait and I have no action, I have no energy whirling around my world, then nothing really does show up. And somebody makes in the comment counter to your beliefs. And so I can believe that maybe that will happen. I'm always surprised, because it's always like, I'm not going to say I'm not surprised. I'm still surprised. I'm always like in awe, and I'm always in prayer and saying thank you. But I always know I have to make the effort to go out and look and do and whatever. And what shows up is like a miracle. But if I don't do the effort, and if I'm not out there, it doesn't show up. So I agree with that. I just had to put that in there. So anyway.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. So there are so many things that could be said. They had so much more. I really want to encourage anyone who's studying the course that last lesson of each unit is that Q&A. And so, John, if you could just chime in, and then I'll ask Jim to add to it, why we're answering the students of answering the questions of students so important to Walter and Leo Russell.
Well, the first thing is that it was their lifeline. It was their reward for putting this home study course together, to have that interaction. Now, you got to understand, we're going back 50, 60, 70 years, whatever it is. Okay. And these young kids today, they call it snail mail. that cracks me up, snail mail. But anyway, it was rewarding for the Russells to have questions, so that the work that they're doing and the information that they're getting out, that people are interested enough to ask the questions, and for them to answer it in this form. So yeah, it's quite rewarding. It's just like for us, when our audience, ask us a question, that's a wonderful feeling for us to know that you're listening, and that you're inquisitive, and you have enough desire within you to want to ask a question and kind of move it forward. So yeah, that's how I would answer that.
Jim, anything you want to add?
Yeah, a question is moving forward. That's a clear example of people that are moving toward that which they want to know. And it's fine to ask questions of other people. Now, ultimately, the deepest form of asking a question is to ask it directly to the source within. But yes, you can reach outside of yourself to like people and get their opinion, but you don't want to limit yourself to other people's opinions and their understanding of something, because they might not know as much as they want to think they do, and you may know more in some cases. But yeah, they're using their own strong arms to glean knowledge by asking questions of others.
Okay.
And Leo thrived. She lived for those letters. They were her joy, communicating with people.
And some of them were very long letters. As I've gone through the archives, these were people who were very dedicated, the people writing letters to Walter and Leo, and then their response to them. So Deb says sometimes underlying beliefs run counter to the prayer request. There's a lot to be said for that, Deb. Very powerful. And Susan has a question of Ken before we go to page 237. Ken, is it correct that prayer is two parts, the petitioning and the listening?
The action.
As I just stated, it was a petition and the performance.
Okay. All right, love that. So
Yeah,
if
there's
we,
also a timing involved there, Kim. You
Go ahead.
Well,
Well,
you know,
an
God's
example-
not a genie where you make a wish and you find everything. The performance, as Karen just said, is I've got to go out and look for it. Had you
Yes.
not looked for the truck, Jim, you wouldn't have found it.
That's true. And
That's
and,
the
and,
performance.
and that happened in 24 hours. I've had things that I have
It's not
prayed
about
and
time. It's not about
I
time.
know. Well, timing is important when I allow, when I say give a prayer to God saying that I would like to manifest this or manifest that, I do my best to allow it to come in God's time. I'm open to that.
If it be thy will is always the best way to
Yes.
put the stamp of, I'd like to do this. This is the performance I get. If it would be thy will, please guide me and make sure that I'm on the right page. Because sometimes we pray for things that we may not be ready for or we're not ready to come in our lives. So I believe it's always important to say, if it be thy will.
Yep.
I've gotten things that I prayed for, and I go, "Oh, you were right. I shouldn't have asked for that." And I got it.
Jackie, you have a thought before we go to 237?
Yes, I think when prayer is heartfelt, you have gratitude for it already being in your presence. And when you have that mindset, when you do go out and you're driving by, you'll see the truck. Otherwise, you wouldn't. You just pass right by it. You start to recognize all those opportunities. John, you can vouch for that in all your antiquing. All the things that you've come across, like, oh yeah, I was looking for something like that, and then you would find it. So it's a matter of that gratitude and realizing that it's not outside of yourself. So you're not asking God outside of yourself, please give me this, please give me that. It's more like, I'm grateful for you showing me the way to this, like it's already there. And I know it's a hard kind of concept to grasp, as part of your daily routine, but
I love it. I absolutely love it. All right, moving to page 237. Yes, John.
I thought I would, as the cosmic gesture, I thought I would bring a little humor to this subject to give people a prime example. So when I met my beloved Karen 18 and a half, almost 19 years ago, we came to find out that we both had almost exact prayers of meeting someone with certain qualities, this and that, this and that, this and that. And so anyway, so here we are 19 years later. And before this, but Karen discovered that in her prayers, she left out the specifics. She was too general in her requests.
Yep.
So what she got, is what she asked for, and she realized she left out some details. So
tell that woman,
be careful what you care for.
My heart goes out to her, that poor girl.
Yeah.
All right, good to have a sense of humor. I am trying to move us to page 237. We'll see if it lands this time. So as they were wrapping up their Q&A here, I want to go down to that second paragraph, and it says, later in this course, we will tell you the greatest of all underlying principles of a living universe. Please note the phrase living universe is balance, all caps. We will quote from the Divine Iliad God's words in which he said that if he could give man but one word, that one word would be balance. And if man needs two words, those two words would be balanced interchange. If man needs three words instead of two, those three words would be rhythmic, balanced interchange. And so again, just really want to land here in Unit 3 that they really went into this idea of rhythmic, balanced interchange. And I wanted to scroll down a little bit more to their 237, James, because it continues where I have it yellow highlighted. And it says these three words, and more especially the one word balance, are the very foundation of every aspect of life. The higher knowledge which we are giving in these lessons is based upon them. How well you may comprehend them measures your power to act them. You are the sum total of your actions. If your actions conform to the meaning of those 3 words, you have the whole mighty power of the universe as yours to command. John wanted to jump in.
I wanted to address the earlier part of the paragraph about the living universe. And I just wanted to comment that science believes that the universe is experiencing a heat death, that it's a one-way system. But because they can't see the invisible, because they can't see the undivided, all right, that's what they conclude. I just wanted to bring that up because by you mentioning that, that's critical for the audience to understand that this is a two-way universe seeking balance. Because just think about it, if it was an out of balanced universe, the chaos would be so phenomenal. You wouldn't be able to do anything. So thank God for balance.
All right,
Literally.
Karen, you have a comment?
When you think of that, you think of hot and cold. If things were only hot, 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 we would just burn up. So if there wasn't a season, you have the winter, you have the 4 seasons. They bring a balance to everything. And when I think of the other thing that you're thinking of, John, I think of the seesaw. At the museum, there's a seesaw. And Kimberly always invites you to sit on the seesaw. And if somebody really heavy is at one end and somebody's really light, you're just going to go, whoa. And so, when somebody carries a heavier burden in life versus something, it creates an imbalance. And so we're looking for balance in life. We're looking for that ease. When it's together, it flows nicely. When somebody's taking too much of this or too much, it creates an imbalance. That creates war. It creates divorce. It creates these things. When there's not a paying attention. So Ken, thank you for paying attention and giving her key and playing the sonata, because that balances her. It brings her to a place of peace after being gone and exerting a lot of energy. You're actually helping her with her resource. So, all those things are important in life to create that. So that's my thought on that.
Very, very powerful. So here we are at one of our favorite times of the broadcast. So we are getting ready to go into what we call a break, but it really is just time for our visual journey that Karen has so lovingly pulled together for Unit 3. Enjoy, sit back, and you haven't seen this one yet. This is brand new because she had been pulling together all of these things from the month. In the meantime, go ahead and jot down your questions. James, are we ready to roll the visual journey?
And I will say I'm going to keep adding a little bit more to that because there's some more yummy things, but I just wanted to say that.
All right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's roll. Wow. So let's have the whole panel up. And so before we go into it, Karen, I know this is an ongoing journey of creation for you. And then I'm going to ask each of the panel to comment. And I know we'll be making some changes and updates to this, and then we upload the final version to YouTube. But what inspires you when you pull this together?
I just like to go page by page, and I like to kind of see the sequence of the ideas and the flow, and the invitation that he has between cross cultures was one. And it didn't make any difference what side it was on. The concepts were the same, especially when he was talking about Jesus to Krishna. And then the idea of the divided. So I try to find things where things that may seem complex become simpler. And so you can visualize them in a way. And the part is always trying to find the pictures that have the feeling tone of what I'm sensing from the work. And that's always kind of the hardest part. So yeah, I got a little bit of work to do because I've been moving and all these other things. But the last couple of days, I've sat and been able to be at peace a little bit more with less interruptions. And it always brings me to that stillness point of like, go within. And that same thing Ken said, go to that inner child or that inner dialogue you have every day.
Thank you. Such an incredible gift. Commentary from the panel before I bring up some comments that are from our viewers.
I appreciate all that you put into it, Karen.
Thank you.
And you've been missed.
Slow it down. The cards are not up long enough to read all the titles.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with you.
But lovely otherwise as we continue to.
Well, there's so much to absorb that it's absolutely stunning work. And so it's like, let it seep in, give the viewer a chance to really appreciate what you're doing, because it's very inspirational. And the quotes you're pulling are very good, and the graphics are unbelievable. So it's such good work. Really, I would like to see more air in it so they could, give time to really, what does that statement mean, or that principle? Just absorb it and then watch the graphics. It really helps you, I think, to merge into the concept with the visual and then feel inside what those words mean. And so the longer I feel as an advanced student, I know these words, and I'm sitting here wanting to absorb it. I'm really saturated in it. So I would like a little more time to just absorb it.
Jim?
I find it's beautiful. I'm an earth sign. I'm a Capricorn. I need visual. I need the visual, and it really helps me a lot. So thank you very much, Karen.
Yeah, I'm like you. I need the visuals, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
John, your comment?
I wanted to bring attention to something that I'd never seen before, and that was that one little tiny square in the bottom right-hand corner. And the lines cut it into a triangle, and then you could see the lines compress from 27.5 to 45 degrees to 90 to 27 to 45 as you went around the cube. I had never seen that before, and that was absolutely beautiful. Beautiful.
John, that came to me too when I put that up. I thought, oh my God, there's a cube in there, and I would like to punctuate that. When I found that, and I said, oh my God, there's a cube.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And it wouldn't be, but as we move on to the Walter Russell work, we will see the cube concept more clearly.
Yes. So Karen says, it's amazing, Karen, that you have this artistic experience. Bonnie says, Lordy, Karen, this is genius, every bit of it. I've always thought of Karen as a conceptual genius. Deb says, masterful, Karen. Thank you. So gracious. And two, we know that these videos do go a little quickly, but do know that when you post them on YouTube, you can hit pause and you can sit there with that quote for as long as you want to and repeat and watch this as long as you want to. This is a gift that Karen is bringing as a volunteer, and please be sure to check out her website, sciencetosage.com. So, Karen, a gracious thank you again.
Yeah, and
Yes,
you can load, but I'll give you a reload. I agree it needs to go longer, even for me, who's like a speed brain. It was a little short, so there you go. I will do that.
Yeah,
You know, one thing I want to say too, with all that magic that we're witnessing, is that for the people that are viewing this, don't let the word. Remember, this is natural science, not academic science. So it's not a science that anybody's ever really witnessed, and very few people have participated in. So don't let it overwhelm you. Being natural, you'll find it organic, as opposed to, I don't get it. It really is as simple as a seesaw, which is explained. Everything you're seeing never really goes past the principle of a seesaw, which is why the work is really worth just saturating in. And I encourage people to go and look at YouTube and just stare at it for a while, because there's a lot that's being said.
Our goal as an Awaken Your Inner Genius team is to be able to create as much as we can to have this historical journey. So it's very, very powerful. And I wanted to, as we get ready to go into this Q&A section, and I'm going to bring up a comment that Bonnie had in just a moment, but if James will pull up that picture of the mountain, please. I wanted to show you all something. This was a photo that I hiked in 2.5 miles into the Grand Tetons, which is out in Jackson, Wyoming, here in the United States. And I took this by my iPhone. And what struck me was the perfection of the reflection of what was above and what was below. And as we talk about this notion of balance, do notice how perfectly balanced it is. It is such a beautiful just example to me of nature's balance. And I remember being in complete silence, because of course there was almost no one else around, of just being there in the pristine beauty. And John, to me, it actually resonated with the fact that if we have that balance inside, that's what we end up seeing outside. Is that fair?
That is. You may not see what's inside, but that's what is being balanced. And you know, this is a principle that we will get into later on in the science units, that what you see above is also simultaneously taking place below. And that's why things are perfectly balanced, because its equal mate is there. There's no residue. Jim uses the word karma. I use the word residue.
Yes. Well, and I wanted to go to the comment. Bonnie actually said something. She said, it's been taught to bring every thought into submission. I like the thought that it means bringing every thought into balance and the wisdom to know what it should be. And I think that's a really powerful shift in many of our minds. I know the word submission, I have a visceral reaction to that after 20 years of being taught that. But I love this. That's really what this Russell work is doing, is shifting in the slightest of ways, but in the most powerful of ways, the way that we can adjust the way we think. So I'm curious if there are any other questions, any comments from the panelists before we see if there are any questions as we begin to wrap up and I share something about some upcoming events.
I do want to mention with Karen, the end with the white light of idea coming into the rainbow colors was really pretty cool.
It was.
I like that.
Now, do know that the panel sees this a little bit like that, but Karen had one where it was actually moving. The panel, this was the first time they saw it too. Karen is usually very busily putting this together all the way up until the day of our broadcast. We try to adjust and change and update, so they are gifted with it at the same time all of our viewers are. Other comments before I share some upcoming events?
I'm a little
I'll give
grounded
you an
now.
example.
I can play more grounded now that I've moved and Tesla Tech is over and all that stuff. I'm a little bit more.
John?
I love how Karen balanced the two titans of music. For a minute there, I thought, oh man, she's just going to show Beethoven. Are you kidding me? And then I saw that picture of my boy, and I was like,
There you go.
come on, Ken, lighten up a little bit, man. You going to sleep on us or what?
Ken, any final comments as we wrap up here today? Okay. We have
All
no
right,
questions.
he's good.
We have no questions in the comments, so we will go ahead and wrap up. We want to encourage you all to please.
Now I do have a comment.
Okay.
Okay. Now that you said that, listen, the people that are online, and even if you aren't online and you come around, the home study course, and what we're doing is giving nuggets. We're trying to take the bumps out of the road, but the mission is that you would take what we've just overviewed, go back and read that unit now over the course of this next week, come back next week and have questions or insights, or tell us what you got out of it, and or any questions you might have, because without those questions, it really is hard to, as you heard from Lael and Walter, one of their joys was to read those questions, because it lets us know what you're getting, what you're not getting, what maybe we can refine or not refine. And most importantly is, did we get a number on how many people actually have this home study course that are on?
We did that earlier this evening. We had a handful of people that had it. Absolutely. So, and I want to encourage people that if they are having any, we don't have a solid number. We had them all mentioned earlier tonight.
So I would encourage anybody who's listening to really get into that. It's in the print, and that print comes alive when you work with God like we're talking about, and read it with God. It will absolutely come alive. You'll start to have a vocabulary you never thought was possible. This stuff that seems unpalatable will become more than palatable. It'll become a part of your vernacular, a part of your being. It's sort of like listening to Beethoven, which John is talking about, and listening and looking at this visual journey. It touches you inside. And so it's so important to have this literature in your hand. And, you can do it monthly or whatever, but I really encourage that part of the lesson. Otherwise, what we're doing here is we're not going through every single line or every single paragraph, which if we did, it would take a lot longer. So the key is to come back, please, with some questions and some insights about what you're getting out of this. It really helps us to help others. Go ahead.
All right, well said. So just a couple of thoughts as we're wrapping up. If you want to send us an email, we've got the awakenyourinnergenius@gmail.com. We can direct you, for those of you that might need a scholarship to be able to get the home study course. There are lots of ways to be able to do it, so please join us. Just a couple of things about upcoming events. Wanted to mention to you that we've had 2 events recently. Let you see that there. So Ken talked in July. I spoke at the museum yesterday, and it was a terrific experience, and we'll have those videos up and share those with you as soon as we can. Wanted to mention something to you. So homecoming is coming up at the Russell Museum the last weekend of September. You can find that out at philosophy.org. But I wanted to highlight one of our past Russell graduates. Marco Williams will be speaking there. He was there with us in January of 2023. He'll be speaking as well, and is pretty excited, and has had some life-changing transformation since he left the Russell experience. And so it's really powerful to see what people do with the Russell work. Wanted to mention to you that we're going to start, hard to believe, September is right around the corner. So take a look at where we're going. We have a big month at September. We'll be going into Unit 4, which is more advanced. Luckily, we have 5 Sundays, so you'll see that we'll attempt to go through lessons 13 through 16, and then we're going to leave that last Sunday for whatever needs to be covered up. Margaret Rue will be joining us again at some point in September. She was hoping to be with us here tonight, but had some laryngitis. So do know that we're diving into September. So a gracious, gracious thank you to all of you here this evening. A gracious thank you to our panel. A thank you to James, who handles so much of the details behind the scenes. And most of all, a big thank you to all of you that are with us tonight, as well as in the future. So everyone who's listened from TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, look forward to seeing you on next Sunday night. Sending you all much love, everybody.